Hey guys, what's up? So we have the situation with the coronavirus, and ministers are now looking at ways to relax travel quarantine rule within the UK. Firstly, before I go into this, my opinion on this is incredibly stupid and potentially very disruptive to a lot of people. The UK, as of now, has handled it as I would say almost as badly as America. We haven't done any sort of proper lockdown. People haven't been tested, and now we have the second highest number of deaths in the world. But yet, just because the hospitality and tourism industries are whining to the government, they're now having to look at how they can let these industries kind of revive themselves. My general opinion on this is just a very bad move. You shouldn't be trying to unlock the country for anything that isn't, I would say, a need. No one needs to travel to the UK right now. Most things are still not open. Even if you do, why would you want to quarantine for 14 days? And the other thing is, why would you want to put your health at risk? This is my biggest kind of bugbear. I don't understand if you're in a country that has been protected, for example, Australia. They say they shouldn't have to be quarantined coming into this country. Well, since you've got barely any cases, you should consider how lucky you are. I wish I was in Australia right now. I'm jealous of the Australians, and I don't mind saying that I'm jealous of them because just with the stupid, just completely stupid people over the last couple of weeks have been going down to beaches, no social distancing, Bristol Beach, Bournemouth, Portsmouth, lots of different places, Durdledore, Cornwall, all of these places are now seeing mass numbers of people turning up when there aren't services available at the time, just so that they can have a bit of a lounge on the beachfront. This is just pathetic. It's just irritating why people think it's okay to do this, and yet we're encouraging it. We've had protests to do with George Floyd. Again, I don't understand why we're protesting. We don't. There's an argument that black people are treated a bit differently by police. But generally speaking, they're not shot at. They might be stopped and searched more frequently. But other than that, it's not a big deal. Why are we getting involved in America's problems? Because now these protests with mass gatherings have happened in at least Cardiff, London, and Manchester, three very highly populated areas. Cardiff being kind of like the capital in Wales and London being the capital of England. Means there are just very high risks. Anyway, the government is looking at ways to relax the 14-day quarantine rule for people entering the UK over the coming months, the BBC Newsnight has learnt. From Monday, most people arriving by plane, ferry or train, including UK nationals, must self-isolate. But some MPs and businesses have expressed concern at the plan, warning it will damage the travel industry. One government source told Newsnight that ministers were looking at ways around the coronavirus quarantine. This could include travel corridors to countries with low infection rates or expanding the list of workers who are exempt from the 14-day rule. This is just pathetic. Even if you were to say do that, how do you know that there are people who aren't travelling over who are going to have cases? I cite something that's happened now in China, where German expats have gone from Germany and have flown to China. And on that first flight, I think this was on Sunday, they had one case on that plane. No one's going to be able to social distance on that plane. People are breathing the same air. And therefore, I would imagine that entire plane is contaminated. There's going to be another flight from that exact place to China on, I think it's tomorrow, Wednesday. It's It's Wednesday, the 3rd of June, and we'll see from there if there's any cases confirmed, which there probably are. I mean, you're just seeing now that places where countries had kind of gotten over their coronavirus, China, Korea, are now seeing cases happen. There's a story as well about how in Korea they're concerned that people who are going into these small enclosed churches, they're now seeing cases of up to about 30 or more people happening, and this is just going to lead to the virus kind of expanding and growing again. It says here that any changes would be guided by the science, but one possible date for a relaxation to the rule could be the 20th of July. This coincides with school holidays, Newsnight was told. It also coincides with the same policy that Northern Ireland has done, where they're planning to reintroduce hotels as of that same date. The quarantine measures come into force on the 8th of June, although some professions are exempt. These I can understand. Lorry drivers, because, they're having to cross borders all the time. Police officers, yes. Seasonal farm workers, I don't agree with, because actually if they're coming from other countries, you don't know the conditions, and actually they are high risk of spreading to us. And healthcare professionals, again, I would be concerned from the point of view that if they're coming from a country where they've been treating and then coming back to a different country, they are susceptible to spreading it, because you don't know the PPE situation with those countries, and also you don't know their just general health policies. Also exempt will be people coming from the Irish Republic, the Channel Islands, and the Isle of Man. Again, I just don't understand that. I don't think there should be a rule for one and not for all. I think there should be, the only people who should be kind of exempt are those lorry drivers and some of the emergency workers. But it shouldn't be specific regions based. Travellers will have to tell the UK government where they will be staying, and if they do not provide an address, officials will arrange accommodation. That's a lot nicer than what a lot of countries would do. Most countries would just turn you back at the airport, which is what I just generally think is a better way of dealing with this. In England, there will be random spot checks and £1,000 fines, while governments in Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland can impose their own penalties. This is to do with the devolution of power. Each of the nations is responsible for its own health systems, its own education systems. This is why it'll be different depending on the territories. Housing Minister Simon Clarke told the BBC Breakfast that the quarantine policy was a proportionate step which would minimise the risk of new cases coming into the UK, just at the time that we are getting a grip on it. He said it was a temporary, time-limited measure, but added that it was vital it was introduced for as long as required. The plan is expected to be set out in more detail later when it is laid before Parliament. MPs are returning to Westminster on Tuesday after weeks of proceedings taking place virtually. Extra guidance about what arrivals would be allowed to do is also expected to be set out, including that travellers will be allowed to take public transport if they are unable to get their accommodation by any other means. The quarantine plan is due to be reviewed every 3 weeks, with the first review of the plan due at the end of June. Announcing the plan last month, Home Secretary Priti Patel said the measure would reduce the risk of cases crossing our border. But since then, the plan has faced criticism from some of the government's own MPs, as well as the travel and aviation industry. One former cabinet minister told Newsnight the idea was daft and suggested the government will not go to the stake on this. Meanwhile, more than 200 business leaders has called on the government to scrap the policy, saying it was deeply worrying for our economy and our country. A group of firms, including Hotel The Ritz and upmarket travel agent Crony, want the government to instead introduce air bridges, an arrangement which allows people from countries with low levels of coronavirus to travel. Last month, the bosses of airlines, including EasyJet, TUI, Jet2 and Virgin Atlantic, also said they had serious reservations about a blanket approach to all arrivals into Britain. At the weekend, former Environment Secretary Theresa Villiers told BBC Radio 4's Westminster Hour she thought quarantine laws should be targeted on flights from COVID hotspots, She also said the government was actively looking at air bridges. BBC Transport correspondent Tom Burridge said reports in the Portuguese media suggest an air bridge with Portugal is on the cards, but he added the UK is behind other countries in Europe in terms of controlling the virus, and so in negotiations the ball might not be in the UK's court. A government spokesperson has previously said these cross-government public health measures are designed to keep the transmission rate down, stop new cases being brought in from abroad, and help prevent a devastating second wave of coronavirus. All our decisions have been based on latest scientific evidence. The list of exemptions have been agreed by all government departments in consultation with their stakeholders, which will ensure critical supplies and services can continue and will be kept under review. It comes as the number of people who have died after testing positive for the virus in the UK reached 39,055. In other developments, Oxford will begin reopening its network of charity. Oxfam will reopen its network of charity shops in England from the 15th of June, although it has not confirmed which stores would open. MPs are to return to Westminster on Tuesday following the Whitsun recess after the government dropped virtual proceedings. The Commons Speaker has urged MPs to agree on a plan to allow all members to continue to take part in Parliament, including those with health conditions. Demand for lettings in Great Britain is up by 22% compared to last year, according to property giant Rightmove, with experts saying lockdown breakups and job changes have boosted the market. And of course, in Northern Ireland, as I mentioned, hotels and tourist accommodation will be allowed to reopen on the 20th of July. So what do you guys think of this opening up the UK? Do you think it's too early? Do you think we're having just incredibly stupid policies introduced? What do you think is going to happen to the future of the UK? Leave your comments down below. Whatever you think, like or dislike the video, or whatever I just want to get your opinions on this. And don't forget to subscribe.